Dr. KHALID MALIK, the founder of Applied Linguistics Groups, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL and uploaded this video for BS English students. Having more than 25 research papers, he also taught at many foreign universities. He was presently admitted to a postdoctoral study at a Canadian university. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at.
What is historical linguistics? Historical linguistics, also called diachronic linguistics, the branch of linguistics concerned with the study of phonological, grammatical, and semantic changes, the reconstruction of earlier stages of languages, and the discovery and application of the methods by which genetic relationships among languages can be demonstrated. Historical linguistics had its roots in the etymological speculations of classical and medieval times, in the comparative study of Greek and Latin developed during the Renaissance, and in the speculations of scholars as to the language from which the other languages of the world were descended. It was only in the 19th century, however, that more scientific methods of language comparison and sufficient data on the early Indo-European languages combined to establish the principles now used by historical linguists. The theories of the neo-grammarians, a group of German historical linguists and classical scholars who first gained prominence in the 1870s, were especially important because of the rigorous manner in which they formulated sound correspondences in the Indo-European languages. In the 20th century, historical linguists have successfully extended the application of the theories and methods of the 19th century to the classification and historical study of non-Indo-European languages. Historical linguistics, when contrasted with synchronic linguistics, the study of a language at a particular point in time, is often called diachronic linguistics. The study of linguistic change is called historical and comparative linguistics. Linguists identify regular sound correspondences using the comparative method among the cognates, words that developed from the same ancestral language, of related languages. They can restructure an earlier proto-language, and this allows linguists to determine the history of a language family. Languages that evolve from a common source are genetically related. These languages were once dialects of the same language. Earlier forms of Germanic languages, such as German, English, and Swedish were dialects of Proto-Germanic, while earlier forms of Romance languages, such as Spanish, French, and Italian were dialects of Latin. Furthermore, earlier forms of Proto-Germanic and Latin were once dialects of Indo-European. Linguistic changes like sound shift is found in the history of all languages, as evidenced by the regular sound correspondences that exist between different stages of the same language, different dialects, and different languages. Words, morphemes, and phonemes may be altered, added or lost. The meaning of words may broaden, narrow or shift. New words may be introduced into a language by borrowing, or by coinage, blends and acronyms. The lexicon may also shrink as older words become obsolete. Change comes about as a result of the restructuring of grammar by children learning the language. Grammar seemed to become simple and regular, but these simplifications may be compensated for by more complexities. Sound changes can occur because of assimilation, a process of ease of articulation. Some grammatical changes are analogic changes, generalizations that lead to more regularity, such as sweeped instead of swept. Old English, Middle English, Modern English. Old English. For 991066 CE. Beowulf. Middle English. 1066 to 1500 CE. Canterbury Tales. Modern English. 1500 present. Shakespeare. Phonological change. Between 1400 and 1600 CE, the Great Vowel Shift took place. The 7 long vowels of Middle English underwent changes. The high vowels I and U became the diphthongs AJ and AW. The long vowels increased tongue height and shifted upward, and A was fronted. Many of the spelling inconsistencies of English are because of the great vowel shift. Our spelling system still reflects the way words were pronounced before the shift took place. Morphological change. Many Indo-European languages had extensive case endings that governed word order, but these are no longer found in Romance languages or English. Although pronouns still show a trace of the case system, he versus him, English uses prepositions to show the case. Instead of the dative case, indirect objects, English usually the words to or for. Instead of the genitive case, English uses the word of or s after a noun to show possession. Other cases include the nominative, subject pronouns, accusative, direct objects, and vocative. Syntactic change. Because of the lack of the case system, word order has become more rigid and strict in modern English. Now it is strictly subject, verb, object order. Orthographic change. Consonant clusters have become simplified, such as hlaf becoming loaf and necker becoming neck. However, some of these clusters are still written, but are no longer pronounced, such as nor, right, and dumb. Lexical change. Old English borrowed place names from Celtic, army, religious and educational words from Latin, and everyday words from Scandinavian. Anglo and Saxon, German dialects form the basis of Old English phonology, morphology, syntax, and lexicon. Middle English borrowed many words from French in the areas of government, law, religion, literature, and education because of the Norman conquest in 1066 CE. Modern English borrowed words from Latin and Greek because of the influence of the classics, with much scientific terminology. Why study linguistic history? The task of comparing insufficiently recorded languages to each other is not an easy one, but it is a worthwhile endeavor for those interested in learning about a group of people. Linguistic history is basically the darkest of the dark arts, the only means to conjure up the ghosts of vanished centuries. With linguistic history, we reach farthest back into the mystery, humankind, Campbell 2013. Philology, to be useful, must take into account everything contributing to language changes. Without proper context and without studying the ways in which language is transmitted from one generation to the next, linguistic shifts could be grossly oversimplified. Language is not some gradually and imperceptibly changing object which smoothly floats through time and space, as historical linguistics based on philological material all too easily suggests. Rather, the transmission of language is discontinuous, and a language is recreated by each child on the basis of the speech data it hears, Kaspersky 1982. Dealing with historical gaps. Of course, with any field of history comes a fair amount of uncertainty. And with that, a degree of educated guesswork. Any fundamental issue in historical linguistics concerns how best to deal with the inevitable gaps and discontinuities that exist in our knowledge of attested language varieties over time. One partial response is that, to put matters bluntly, in order to deal with gaps, we speculate about the unknown, i.e. about intermediate stages, based on the known. While we typically use loftier language to characterize this activity, the point remains the same. In this respect, one of the relatively established aspects of language that can be exploited for historical study is our knowledge of the present, where we normally have access to far more data than could ever possibly become available for any previously attested stage, at least before the age of audio and video recording, no matter how voluminous an earlier corpus may be. Joseph and Janda 2003. The nature and causes of language change. You might be wondering why language changes. According to William O'Grady et al., historical language change is distinctly human. As society and knowledge shift and grow, so, too, does communication. Historical linguistics studies the nature and causes of language change. The causes of language change find their roots in the physiological and cognitive makeup of human beings. Sound changes usually involve articulatory simplification as in the most common type, assimilation. Analogy and reanalysis are particularly important factors in morphological change. Language contact resulting in borrowing is another important source of language change. All components of the grammar, from phonology to semantics, are subject to change over time. A change can simultaneously affect all instances of a particular sound or form, or it can spread through the language word by means of lexical diffusion. Sociological factors can play an important role in determining whether or not a linguistic innovation is ultimately adopted by the linguistic community at large. Since language change is systemic, it is possible, by identifying the changes that a particular language or dialect has undergone, to reconstruct linguistic history and thereby posit the earlier forms from which later forms have evolved. O'Grady et al. 2009. What does historical linguistics study? Historical linguistics explores different aspects of language change. The most commonly studied areas in historical linguistics are etymology, studying the reconstruction and origin of words. Studied areas in historical linguistics are analysis and description of multiple speech communities. Tracing, as far as possible, the history of language. This includes Sanskrit, Latin, Old English, and also modern languages, such as German, Italian, and Japanese. This process also involves grouping languages into categories, or families, according to the extent to which those languages are similar to each other. Describing and analyzing changes of any type which have occurred cross-linguistically and within a language itself. Languages can change in any area of language. Phonology, syntax, morphology, and orthography are only a few of the areas which could be considered. The construction of a framework of theories which can account for how and why languages change. Subfields. As is evident, the study of historical linguistics concerns many different topics. For this reason, it is comprised of different subfields. Comparative philology, or comparative linguistics, concerns the comparison of cross-linguistic features in order to establish the relatedness of languages. Etymology concerns the study of word histories. This process may involve answering the following questions. Why did a particular word enter the language in question? Where does that word root come from? How has its orthographic, phonological, and semantic value changed over time? Dialectology concerns the historical study of dialects. Features which are usually a matter for debate are grammatical variations between two dialects, and phonological changes within a dialect over time. Phonology concerns the study of the sound systems which exist, or have existed, in a specific language. Studies in phonology can also concern comparative approaches to language studies between different time periods, dialects, and languages. Morphology as syntax concerns how the means of expression of a language evolve over time. It is usually focused on inflectional systems, grammatical structures, and word order.
Dr. KHALID MALIK, the founder of Applied Linguistics Groups, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL and uploaded this video for BS English students. Having more than 25 research papers, he also taught at many foreign universities. He was presently admitted to a postdoctoral study at a Canadian university. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at